Welcome to So You Want to Be a Principal Herald. I am Master Ryan McWhite, Baron of the Court of the East, former Brigantia Principal Herald and Herald Extraordinary.
I am Cormac Moore, former Crescent Principal Herald of Caid, Companion of the Order of the Pelican, and Baron of the Court of Caid, currently stepping up as Reef Principal Herald.
I am Kameshima Zentaro Umakai, Companion of the Order of the Pelican, former Silver Buckle Principal Herald of Ethelmark, and Baron of the Court of the Kingdom of Ethelmark, and Herald Extraordinary.
I am Lady Constantia. I have my Callan Cross, which is a GOA for service in Callantyre. I am former Gold Falcon Principal Herald of Callantyre.
And Herald Extraordinary.
I am Greek Fire Herald Extraordinary.
And I am Bear Herald Extraordinary, I forgot to mention.
And both of our Herald Extraordinaries are pending.
Yes.
We initially conceived of this class as just a random conversation between the four of us, and we said, oh my God, this is a great thing. We had such a varying amount of experiences during our terms, as Principal Heralds, that we thought that our experiences could help anyone else who's in the position or who was thinking about taking the position. And it all went downhill from here, and here we are. The first question that I'm going to ask to start things going is why? Why did we choose to become Principal Heralds? And we'll start with Constance.
So my Pelican basically said, you know, he pulled me aside before he was my Pelican. He's like, you should consider doing this. And I told him, no. Clearly that did not stick. Because I stepped up as Gold Falcon's emergency deputy and kind of her personal secretary. And I looked at how she did the job, and I'm like, I could do this job. This would work. And I had so many ideas for how to improve the college, or come up with new ideas. And and interviewed for it and got it and went on from there.
Well, my main reason, to be perfectly honest with everyone, is completely sentimental. I had been involved in court heraldry in Ethelmark for about a dozen years or so, both at the baronial level and at the kingdom level, and I saw two things that really made me want this job. And at that time, Silver Buckle was also the primary court herald, the primary royal court herald. I saw that moment, and those of you that have done court heraldry know that moment that I'm talking about, when someone's kneeling in court and all of a sudden they're no longer in a school auditorium or a church sanctuary or what have you, and they're not sitting before a doctor and a psychologist who happen to be sitting on fancy chairs and fancy clothes. They're in a royal court before their majesties, and they're getting recognized by the king and queen. And that's a magic moment. And I'll be perfectly selfishly honest, I got such a rush out of helping make that moment. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I saw people that were in the SCA only a couple of years, not only hadn't been getting the recognition, but had been treated so badly, had been talked down to by people with peerages or people with coronets, or just people that had been around longer than they had, and they were leaving and they were missing this magic moment. And I said, I can do something to help make those moments happen, to help keep these people in this game that we're all here because we love. At least you better be here because you love it, because if not, you're wasting your time. And being part of that court experience and being part of administering the protocol and the ceremony that makes this game we play was so important to me that I said, this is how I can help make that happen.
When I first applied for Crescent Principal Herald, I was a year and a half into the game, and I wanted to be treated like an adult because I was 22. And
Well,
it was dumb, and I didn't get chosen because I wasn't ready. And then 3 years later, I put in again because I was 25 and I wanted to be treated like an adult. It was about me, and I didn't get chosen both times, and it was a good thing because I wasn't ready. Later on, there were some issues within the college, ways heralds were being treated, ways paperwork was being processed that upset me so much and put me into an untenable situation that I actually resigned from the College of Heralds. I filed a letter of resignation from the college, and I stepped back. And 3 months later, a call went out for not only the principal herald, but all of the senior staff positions. They're going to change them all over at once. And they wanted a group bid. And I realized at that point that I had an opportunity to fix the things that I saw that were wrong with the college, the things that were broken, that were easily repaired, as long as they had people paying attention to them. And I called up the A-team. I called up a former Wreath Principal Herald to be my submissions deputy. I called up a Herald Extraordinary who was the best court herald in the kingdom who would do the job, and signed him up as my court deputy. I called a magnificent woman who was the best field deputy that we had ever had, and I asked her to do the job again. And I put together the A-team, not for me, but for what we could do to fix the college and the kingdom. And that was when I got chosen.
You acted like an adult.
I acted like an adult.
This one was really tough for me to really think of. That's why I led off the conversation on it, is because for the longest time in the East, the procession of jobs was really a set thing. You were a local herald, and then you were picked to do tournaments or submissions, and then it was kind of expected that you would put in your name for the big job. I went through the tournament circuit. I ran the tournaments for my predecessor, Master Rowan Brigantia, and it came down to him needing to step down after his 4 years, during which he ran not only the college, not only dealt with the failing health of his pelican. It was everything happened at once to him, and then he had to look for a successor and didn't get anyone volunteering. He came up to me at an event and basically said, "I'd like you to think about this. I'd like you to really think about this." And I looked back, and before him, the Brigantia before him had a 4-year term. The Brigantia before him had a 2-year term. So and that was right around where I started playing. So I didn't have this institutional knowledge that was how the procession really kind of worked. He came to me and said, "I think you'd do a good job." And then I backed off, and I thought about it for a little while, and I looked at where I was, what I could do, and I realized I could do some good work. I could fix some problems that had been cropping up. And to use a term that I have become all too familiar with over the last 6 months, I found a hill upon which to die. And I threw myself into it, and it was, to be honest, the best experience that I've had in the SCA. Because it gave you instant access to all the royals, and all the royals during my term were fantastic people. I met people that I am now very close friends with because of this job. And if Rowan hadn't taken me and gone, "You need to do this," I would have missed out on so much. And I had just lost a baronial election, and I was really, really down. It turns out that he was actually waiting for me to lose the election before asking me. Because if I had won, he would have been up shit's creek.
I was about to say, good Lord, what would he have done?
Y'all would have been screwed.
Yeah, yeah.
It would have been even worse for him, because he would have had to stay on past his term limits, which is a big no-no in the East. So that's us. That was the first leading question. We really build this as a round table but we don't have a round table. But we want to hear questions from you guys. So hands, if you got a question for us that you want to hear us talk about.
What was the biggest challenge that you had to address during your term as Principal Herald? And what about it made it so challenging?
Oh,
Ryan?
What was the biggest challenge that we had during our terms?
Remember, this is going to be broadcast live.
Ryan, shall I start?
Well, you started the last one. We're going to start
Okay.
with Kameshima.
Oh, thanks. Remember, this is being on YouTube. Honestly, the biggest challenge that I think I had to deal with was people taking on jobs that they didn't understand the scope of and that they weren't ready for. And that was partially very much my fault and my responsibility, because I didn't take the time to really sit down with them and, maybe with the person they were replacing as well, and say, okay, we need to talk about everything that this job entails. And if it's, if that happens in a position that's, frankly, a nice to have, that's one thing. If it's in a critical position, your kingdom can be royally screwed. And that will become the total of your focus as Principal Herald, is trying to keep your kingdom out of the fire. So, yeah, probably one of the biggest problems that I faced was people taking on jobs that they were not prepared for, and then when they got to the point where it became too much for them, and I've done this, we've all done this, they turtled. Does everyone know what I mean by that? Mm-hmm. Okay. For anyone on the video stream who doesn't, that means that they basically retreated into themselves, didn't ask for help, stopped communicating entirely, rather than being open and saying, hey, I'm in over my head, I need help. And when that happens, as a Principal Herald, you have enough other things on your plate that it gets really difficult to have to keep hounding this person, especially when they're not responding at all. But that's what you have to do. And it can get really, really fatiguing, both for you and for them.
I had more than a couple challenges during my tenure, but one of the most challenging was a recurring theme of trying to build consensus between what the royals wanted and what the peerage orders wanted, specifically for ceremony. In Caid, we have a ceremony book. It is not quite kingdom law, but it might as well be. And the ceremony for coronation is sacrosanct, due to some of the history between difficult royals who were later R&D'd, and the way they treated peerage. The peerage orders required that the crown recognize the charters and the statutes of the orders as part of the coronation ceremony. Initially, this was done in the middle of court after the crowns had been placed upon the heads, and if the royals refused to do so, the peers would walk, and they'd walk the entire reign. A royal came up that wanted to change this part of the ceremony, did so without telling anyone. Literally, the day of coronation was handing out new scripts, and I had to talk everyone down from the ledge that day, and then work with his vision of how that should be with the needs of the peerage orders. I actually had to go to each of the peerage meetings. In Caid, they don't happen at events, they happen on separate days, essentially in rented rooms, and they are business meetings of the orders. And I had to get myself onto the docket for each of those order meetings, present the revised coronation ceremony, present how it actually protected their rights more, to have it be part of the oath of fealty that the crown swears before they become the king and queen, and then pull the presentation of the charters. And that used a whole lot of political capital that probably could have been spent better elsewhere. But it got the job done, and it actually helped, in my opinion, the view and the image of court. But Yeah, that was rough.
The hardest thing that I really had to go through as Brigantia was our OP clerk passed away. She was, she's a Tiger of the East, Mistress of the Pelican, Mistress of the Laurel, I think. She hand edited the HTML on our OP website. There was no database, there was no institutional knowledge. She did the precedence cards for our crown tournaments manually every year. She actually would cut and paste onto the index cards for the heralds to read in procession. She was fantastic. She got sick very suddenly. She passed away very suddenly. And nobody knew her system. For one of the most important things a College of Heralds has to keep up. We had no OP clerk who could do what she did. And that was how I started as Brigantia. That happened within 3 weeks of me taking over. Her funeral was 2 weeks after I was invested as Brigantia. Her protege took over, got somebody to take it over, and that person was still in training when she passed away because she knew she got sick, but there was not enough training. And the person that was chosen was a darling. She's one of my dearest friends now that we've worked together and we went through this fire together. And I love her to death. And we went through Generation 2. We made a database. We copied at the Atlantean database. We got a copy of it and we started modifying. And she powered through that for 3 years. And it finally came online at the middle of last year, I think. But we had a project going for almost my entire time as Brigantia to replace one person. And that was the most difficult thing, the most difficult single thing that I had to do as Brigantia.
So, this is going to be even more of a downer. Sorry. I kind of went in with guns blazing, thinking, oh, I'm going to change everything, and realized this isn't going to work. And by the time I had figured that out, we were halfway through my tenure. And then my stepdad got sick. But wait, there's more. My mom started a new job. My mom lost her job. I went on furlough from my job, started a new job that was really stressful, like eaten alive by stress. And then my mom was diagnosed with leukemia. My mom then passed away 4 months later. I literally pulled the plug the day of a crown tournament. Uji thankfully was able to step in as my deputy and kind of handle things as we dealt with my mom's estate. But, you know, on a personal level, knowing when to step away is one of the hardest decisions that anyone can make, and especially for what reasons. And here I am getting verklempt, but
you have every right to.
Right, but even then, and because I cared so much for the job and I cared so much for the College of Heralds, that it would, it'd say, Uji, you're gonna give this back. It'll be okay, but I need to go, like, not be in charge of things for a couple of weeks. Can you handle this? And he did admirably. Thank you. In case I haven't thanked you enough, thank you. But yeah, that was one of the hardest things that I had to deal with, and being, 33 and losing your mommy. Yeah, on top of dealing with all the other issues that go, all the political issues and all the other issues that go with being a principal herald at the same time. So knowing what your life looks like, and some things you don't know until it hits, but knowing yourself well enough to make that decision is one of the most important things that I think someone coming into this role needs to evaluate. So, sorry, I told you it was a downer. So,
Taryn, you got a question?
Yeah. Before we came out to the co-launch of Principal Herald, what was the thing that gave you the most support from each other? Bring you guys back up a little bit, sounds
Right.
like.
Yeah.
What was the thing that you guys did? What was the thing that you each received from each other that was the biggest support?
The question is for the video, why we're supporting each other and why we're still here, and why we're still friends even though we've stepped down. Good paraphrase?
Pretty much.
And how we supported each other during our time and after.
And what we both got out of the support that we had from each other.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Here's where we go off the rails.
Yeah.
yes.
I'm going to try and keep it on the rails because more than just comic relief, which there was a lot of during
God,
all of our
yes.
tenures. There was perspective that we each gave each other. We all come from very different kingdoms. These two less much, but
That's why we're each
Child.
other's way.
exactly. But we each brought our own perspectives. I would go to not even the Principal Herald's list. I would go to these guys, and I would ask. I'd ask Constantia. I'd talk to her on a regular basis. I'd ping Ryan. I'd talk to Meshma about issues that I was having, and they would do the same. And we each gave each other perspective. We were shoulders to cry on. We were places that we could take the ridiculous and go, this is crazy, right? This is absolutely crazy.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Or unless it was someone else doing it, in which case, no, they shouldn't be doing that. That's terrible.
Don't ever do that. Don't ever go full Ryan.
How's the other side of that bus look?
But the thing is, it's continued. And
Yeah.
the reason we're still here, which was the part of the question, is we have continued to support one another. And there are other Principal Heralds as well, and other people that we've met as part of our tenure, both within and without the College of Arms, within our own College of Heralds, who have become lifelong support. And Constanti and I still talk
Almost every day.
at least every other day, if
Yeah.
not every day, about everything.
Yeah.
So.
I talk to these three people probably more than I talk to my family. I know that's a bad saying for me, but my mom knows what I'm saying.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. You're gonna see this. Because she's now on my Facebook. But I gave you a brief synopsis of some of the worst parts about being Brigantia, and the other thing that was really difficult was dealing with Penzik, and that man kept me sane.
How'd you manage that
Relatively
one?
speaking.
Yeah, how'd you manage that
If I hadn't walked into Known World in San Antonio and saw him sitting there, and I went, oh, I know him. This is going to be okay, because all three of the principal war heralds for Penzik had turned over that year, and nobody told us what to do.
Oh.
Nobody told us that the Great Dark Horde provides the war arrow every year. Our first war, King Gregor pulls an arrow out of the champion's quiver and breaks it. The year after, the Great Dark Horde did not declare for either side. Their people went mercenary for the entire year, and in protest of that one small act, because neither one of us were told that was part of the ceremony.
And that's why it's now written down.
And yeah, we're writing it down. But I talk to her about random stuff that happens in our lives. I talk to him on a regular basis.
Mostly about Ingress.
About Ingress, about other things
Yeah.
that we're doing outside of the SCA.
Oh, yeah.
Common interests that we all have. You know, I drove him up from Atlanta Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
You
put
know.
him up in the hotel room for the night because his B&B wasn't ready.
So that's what we gain from each other, is that, you know, I didn't find three more Principal Heralds that I just hung out with. I found three friends.
Oh yeah.
So
They're my guinea pigs when I find horrible names.
Yeah.
And it'd say,
should I drink right now?
What? Yes.
Okay.
No.
Yes. No. Yes. No.
But when my mom died, you know, I had the support of them. I also had the support of my college, but I mean, like, you know, I need to cry, and I need to cry at home, but I need to talk. And talking via typing is sometimes easier for me. So, you know, I'm like going as I'm typing. So it's but they listened to me. If I had a protocol question, because I'm still relatively new in the SCA, being in for about 10 years. It would say, what would you guys do in this situation? Just to kind of gauge where I should go. And they helped. Sometimes they helped. But, you know.
We're good heppers.
They're great heppers.
We have been.
Oh my God. But you know, I'm not exaggerating when I say I have my band of brothers in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. To sum up in 2 words, kindred spirits.
We're all insane.
Well, yeah, there's that. But yeah, you know, as these guys have all said, you know, it's people that I know I can go to when I have, you know, when someone else has done something stupid and I need to fix it. There are also 3 more very valuable pairs of eyes to see things that I don't see, and you know, as happened recently. And I know that, you know, if there's something that I need to be made aware of that I'm just not seeing, I know they will come to me. I know they will tell me the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, to be, you know.
Yeah, even if it hurts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, but I trust them. I trust their perspectives. I trust their advice implicitly, and that, you know, was, each of those was forged in different ways for each of them. But you know, even since then, you know, as you said, you know, I know I can go to any of them with anything, heraldic or not, SCA or not.
And
We are.
the one thing that we did not touch on, none of us touched on, I just thought of it right now.
Yeah.
Anything that was said between us,
Oh yeah.
Was
we
kept.
trusted us,
Oh, yeah.
each other to Vegas. What happened in it stayed.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes what happened in Vegas, we totally put on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But we knew enough to basically say, this is a sensitive issue, we're not going to make fun of it. You know, we may come off as silly, but each one of us can be some of the
Relatively
most serious
responsible
people.
adults.
We can be responsible adults. Shocking, I know.
Well, but in this job, to kind of bring it back to the topic at hand, you have, you know, we're all, both the 4 of us and everyone in this room, at least to a certain extent, you know, we're all relatively silly people. You know, we all like to make fun, we all like to play at things, but when you do this job, when you step into this role, you have to know, without thinking, you have to implicitly know where the line is. And you have to know where it is before you cross it.
Because when you cross it, it ain't good.
Yeah. You know that line you're not supposed to cross?
You're
Look
6
behind
foot
you.
on the other side. Yeah.
You know, you have to know where that line is, and you have to know how to be serious and be businesslike and not just fake it. Because you're responsible for your kingdom.
Anyway.
Okay, we've done the hardest thing. We've
The best.
done. What was the biggest accomplishment of your tenure?
Ooh.
You need to start this one.
And of course, Cormac, you know I'd be the one to ask this question.
Want to repeat for the video?
Yeah. What is our biggest accomplishment as a Principal Herald? Bringing some form of the OP back online was a really big accomplishment for me, but that really wasn't my accomplishment. That was the work of a lot of other people that I just happened to be associated with. My biggest accomplishment is actually recodifying Penzik. I want to say that, and I'm going to share that with you because we spent 4 years as Eastern War Herald and Ethelmark War Herald basically writing everything down that should have been written down or had been lost. I only found out after I stepped down as Principal Herald that most of it is codified in the Mid-Realm Herald's Handbook.
Oops. That would have been nice to know.
It would have been really nice to know, but it is what it is.
Hey, sometimes our parents are okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say now most of it is codified in the Ethelmark
It will
ceremony handbook.
it will very soon be in the Penzic Royalty Handbook.
There you go.
I have two. One is we rewrote the Callantyre Herald's handbook. We went from 300 pages, single spaced, lots of pages saying this space or this page left intentionally blank, to a very lean 100 pages, including appendices.
Ours is 20.
You know, yeah, but we have articles. We like writing. Callantyre, hi. And the other one is the Herald's. We put together a Herald's retreat, and that is a time to not garb, you know, hang out and get to know your brother and sister Heralds as people, and not just, oh, well, you're from Forgotten Sea. We don't like Forgotten Sea because you do things a little differently than Three Rivers, or you do things differently than Cordon Wee. And we're barony in your Shire, and we're just, no. It was a time to, let's take classes, let's learn how to do all of these things together. Let's ask questions. And it's informal, so that took away a lot of those barriers. So, yeah.
Again, I'm going to sneak two in here. The first one was when I took over the office, there was no Principal Herald's Handbook.
Mm-hmm.
There was no documentation of ceremony. There was a Herald's Handbook. It is still unfortunately woefully out of date. That's a project that I tried to start and didn't finish. But there's now a Principal Herald's Handbook. There's now a lowercase, not codified into law, not the only one true way book of ceremonies. And there's also now the other thing that I did was in Ethelmark for an approximately 6-month reign, we are now averaging somewhere along the lines of 20 RPs per reign.
Royal Progress.
Royal Progress event. Royal Courts. And as I said, when I took over the office, Silverbuckle was still the primary court herald, which means I was going to events at least 3 weekends a month. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to, because I was responsible for it. So I instituted the creation of the position of court herald in Ethelmark, which did not exist as an official deputy before then, that now serves for one reign. The choice of that deputy is a joint choice between Silverbuckle and the heirs as soon after crown tournament as is feasible. They then get the entire heirs' reign to work together with the heirs to figure out how they want their system to work, to figure out how they're going to work with the signet, etc. While the current court herald is busy working with the current king and queen, so that when the changeover happens at coronation, they step up and the engine is already in place and ready to go. And that way they can find the system that works for the three of them, and it doesn't have to be the same from reign to reign. So yeah, instituting the position of court herald and actually writing stuff down.
Non-scripted, non-est.
Yep.
Non-scripted, non-est. Semper Literis Mandate.
Yep.
We also did a complete overhaul of the OP, but mostly that was Marie DeBlas's work. I just hired her.
I tried to, but then she had a baby.
Yeah, it happens. My biggest accomplishment isn't really something that I can point to. We had a major recruitment, retention, and culture problem with the College of Heralds just before I stepped up as Crescent. The recognition system for heralds had been so neglected as to be entirely obsolete. We were having incredible difficulty getting new people to come in, and we were burning out the old people really, really fast. And a lot of that was due to a perception that the heralds were insular and snooty and stuffy, and it was just not someone you wanted to hang out with, not a group that you wanted to be a part of. And I'm pretty pleased to say that I was able to turn that around enough to stabilize. It wasn't perfect by the time I stepped down, but it was in a decent position that when I handed it off to my successor, Paul, who's in the back there.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Paul with the good heraldry.
Oh my God.
He was able to take it and make
People
it.
on the video are confused.
He,
Yeah, it's
he
great.
looks really spiff in his heraldic.
Paul,
garb.
just come on up here.
Do a twirl.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah, he was able to take it and make it soar. So here's Paul. If you'll
Hi,
step
Paul.
forward.
Keep going. Just walk
Right
by.
in front
It's
of
your
me.
runway.
There you go.
All right, Paul, everyone.
Hi, YouTube. He'll be at the fashion show later.
Right.
We'll need the waivers for the video.
Oh God.
I was able to get recruitment up. I did a complete revamp of the pursuivancy and herald system that made sense, that allowed aspiring heralds who felt that they didn't have the rank that they deserved to come to Crescent to talk about it, to see if they need to be kicked up either to a pursuivant or a capital H herald. I know in some kingdoms personal rank is not a thing, but in Kaid it is. If you are a pursuivant, you are a pursuivant, no matter what position you hold. If you're a capital H herald, you're a capital H herald no matter what. And so I institutionalized a rubric of skill sets, and if you had these skill sets, it was a guideline, but people were able to look at it and go, all right, well, I can run a decent court, and I know how to put together a name and armory submission without it being bounced back, and I can run field heraldry pretty decently. I think according to this, I'm a pursuivant. What do you think, Crescent? And Crescent could say, yes, well, I think you're definitely here, you're here. I want to see a little bit more from you here, and then we'll make it happen. And it was a very open and honest dialogue, which meant that the heralds were talking to one another and were approachable. We had more more consultations occurring, especially at smaller events where it was just old Cormac sitting there with books, or other heralds that were known to be approachable. I made sure that the people who were doing consultation were people who were good with people. They may not have been the best paperwork people, but they were approachable and they could work with the submitters.
And to kind of dovetail off of that, or not dovetail, but springboard off of that, knowing who your people are, and and saying like, I had a couple people who were really crispy and had to replace them very quickly, and it'd say, you've already been doing this. Why don't you just go ahead and take the job? And so it's encouraging them to kind of, see where your people really excel. Sorry, volunteer management's kind of one of my things. We'll get to that later.
Yep.
So yeah, finding the newcomers and putting them in positions where they can thrive, including finding a person who had never known the SCA where I wasn't Master Cormac, and I was elevated in 2012, and making him my submissions deputy, and now he's a fantastic.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul. Paul's great, by the way. I don't know if they all meant Paul. The subtitle of this presentation is, so you want to be a principal herald? Talk to Paul.
Catch that bus.
All right, so
He hit you on the next stop after it passed me by. So,
all right, so is there any questions?
we had a question over here.
So obviously we all come with different experiences, different strengths and weaknesses when we come into the college. I mean, I stumbled into this as a baronial pursuivant. What was your biggest weakness when you became a principal herald, and do you feel that it impacted your ability to do the job in any great fashion, or how did that maybe change during the course of your tenure?
So the question was, what was our greatest weaknesses coming in?
Yeah.
Basically boils down to.
How did that affect or change?
How did it affect us?
Rebecca could say these are-
Hi. So I have a temper. I have a really bad temper, and if something happens, and I get really frustrated easily. And we had a few things during the first reign and a half of my tenure where things went down and I handled them poorly. I learned real quick why not to do it that way. And that one of the things that I learned was, don't just shoot off an email. Let it sit for a couple of days. Like I said, there might have been a bit of a spat between me and the Kingdom Web Minister. Oops. So yeah, that definitely to my detriment. But again, I learned from it. We both survived our tenures. We get along quite well now. It's great. But yeah, I better learn real quick, otherwise I will have no friends, and that's gonna suck. So,
to a certain extent, my answer is the same because I also have a bit of a temper.
Really?
Right. The other facet of that problem for me was when I took over the office, I was a little jaded, a little burned out with the SCA in general. And that kind of goes back to why I took the job was I wanted to make it better for other people. Part of that was because I was seeing all the things that were wrong. And I was actually having trouble a lot of the time still seeing the things that were right. And I was having trouble seeing anything other than people behaving badly. And so to a certain extent it was the same thing of, yes, in this job you have to have not only the skill but you have the responsibility to tell truth to power. You still have to do it in a way that they listen to you. And if you not quite literally, but for all intents and purposes say, you're being a moron, they stop listening to you. And that was kind of where I was, where I took over the job, because I just didn't care anymore. So, yeah, and that, again, that led to a lot of, broken bridges, things that had to be smoothed over, people that had to be mollified, feathers that had to be unruffled. But I learned, I fixed that, I got better at that, and I actually was also able to channel that into the improvements that I tried to make to the college, the improvements that I tried to direct to the college, into fixing those issues that I had seen that were there.
So also have a temper.
we kind of all have friends. Now do you see why we get along?
Right.
I had in many ways the exact opposite issue that you had, which had the same result. I am young, confident, and full of zeal and enthusiasm.
That's one way to put it.
And
there's another more alliterative version of that.
Yeah.
Rather than seeing everything that was wrong with the SCA, I saw everything that the SCA could be. And I expected the peers of the realm to live up to it. I expected the officers to want to do their jobs. I expected the peers to want to do their jobs. And when they didn't, I asked them why not.
Oh yeah.
You're supposed to be peer-like, right?
What the hell, man?
Be peer-like. Chivalry, it's a thing, right? Yeah, we're on board with chivalry.
You should think about that.
And when I write that out, without the smiley face behind it, and
email has no body language.
It really doesn't.
No tone.
It came across as, you're a peer! Peer! Which, when you haven't yet turned 30 and are decidedly not a peer, make you think, oh, maybe this guy doesn't need to be a peer. I was made a peer, by the way.
3 seconds is hope for all.
Yeah. But the energy of the young man in an old person's game, and a lot of the people that I was dealing with were just as jaded, and not necessarily bored, but just put off at the idea of maintaining the veneer of chivalry for the newcomers, as opposed to actually wanting to do it to be a better person. It was difficult to communicate that and be on the same page with the people that I was trying to work with and respect.
My biggest problem when I stepped up is that I went into the job with an agenda. There were several major problems specifically in the award structure of the East. We had, Malcolm, how many awards did we have that were named badly?
Yes.
At least a half a dozen, I'd say.
Yeah, when we started looking at it, it was right when Laurel dictated that all Kingdom Awards had to be registered through the college. We had at least half a dozen awards that were not going to pass in any way, shape, or form. I went into the first curia that I could, literally four weeks after I took office, and I went, Your Majesty, here are names for all the awards that are named. Here are new names that will pass for all the awards that are named poorly. They looked at it and went, oh, that's cute.
Who are you again?
And they knew who I was because I was their Rain Herald as well. But I didn't have that clout yet. I came in thinking I was going to fix everything in under a month.
Sorry. That's my outdoor
I
laugh.
know, so cute in my naivete. But yeah, I thought that I was going to walk in, get everything done, and I got a very quick lesson in reality. So, I just got the high sign from Taryn in the back saying that we only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to take the last question just like I took the first question, if you don't mind. Sorry.
Okay, so what would be the one?
No. We are at time,
Yeah.
so
Sorry.
I'm going to
Sorry.
put the last question to the four of us.
Okay,
It
come
was
up and
something.
talk to us later.
Yes, most certainly, most
Yes.
certainly. It is something that we talked about last night, and it is something that we kind of hinted on in the last couple questions. Is I was a peer going into the job. These guys weren't. She still isn't. I walked in with the power of being a pelican behind me, and that made it a lot easier because I already had that authority, and I didn't have to walk on eggshells, to be quite honest.
Going into it, I hadn't quite lost the focus of getting the cookie. Obviously you don't get the cookie, but I was focusing more on fixing the issues, which actually put me more in a good light. But because I hadn't been recognized, it took a lot more effort.
I had a very odd situation where information was leaked to me several years previous that I was going to be getting my Pelican within a year. That was 8 years before I took the job. So by the time I took the job, I just had resigned myself to the fact that it was never going to happen. Which again, to go back to my previous comment, gave me this very unique perspective of, I'm more than happy to tell these people they're morons because I don't care. I just didn't care. Why they decided to give me a Pelican anyway, I still don't know, but you know.
So as someone who isn't one, isn't one currently,
Yeah, don't.
Yeah.
That causes more problems than it solves.
At any point, my focus was the college. My focus was not, hey, there's a cookie. It's there are things that still need to be done. How much time do I have? And that was my focus. And that still remains my focus in my retirement. Not my responsibility. For now, yeah. So
That one we can say.
Right, I'm sorry. There is a point that I feel the need to bring up for anyone who wants this job.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Because it's very, very
We're
important.
in
to me
closing
today.
statements. So.
For anyone who wants this job, you're the one who's going to be getting the office, getting the tabard, getting the recognition, sitting in curia, whatsoever. When I go to an event, I get to put on a coronet, I get to put on a Pelican medallion. When I was Silver Buckle, I got to put on a really spiffy tower. I got to put on a lot of spiffy stuff. The most important thing, by far, that I wear to any event is this. When you take this job, it is not just about you, and it does not just affect you. It affects your family. If you have a spouse, a significant other, kids, other family members that you deal with on a regular basis, this affects them. This will change their life, whether or not they are in the SCA. You have to keep that front and center. You have to discuss before you apply for the job, before you accept the job if it is offered to you, before you do anything. You need to have their support. You can't do this job without their support. Period. End of discussion.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Rule 0 of the SCA is real life comes first.
Yes.
And
If you're not following that rule 0, if you're sacrificing your life for the society,
oh God.
you're doing it. One, you're doing it wrong, and two, the society is going to know
Yeah.
that your life is falling apart behind the scenes, and it affects your life in the society. Right.
Yeah, well,
You-
yeah,
that-
like my life exploded
Yeah,
for
right.
basically 8 months of my tenure. So, it's, having the society was great, but there was a point where you have to go, time out. And that's okay. It's okay to say, I need to step away for a little bit. I will come back. But the other part of that is also commitment.
Yeah, right.
You are taking on anywhere from a 2-year to, in some cases, 4, or if you're really crazy, 5, depending on kingdom law.
Yeah.
A commitment, and it is your commitment to serve. One of my favorite musicals is 1776, and John Adams goes, John Adams had written to Abigail, and she reminded him, commitment, Abby. That is what you told me. Commitment. So don't half-ass it. Basically, go in, not necessarily balls to the wall, but commit to it.
Yeah.
Stick with it. See it through.
We are at time. I'd like to thank everyone who came. This is a gigantic, I'm kind of humbled by how many people are standing in the back of this room. One of the things that we wanted to do to just finish out is, you guys all came to hear us, but I want to see how many other people are Principal Heralds or have been Principal Heralds in this
Please
room.
stand.
And the entire back row heckling section stands up. You guys know what we're talking about. You're experiencing it now. If you learned anything from us today, my mission to you all is to make sure that your successors know what they're getting into. Because it is a gigantic, life-changing commitment that will change your life, and it'll change your life in the SCA.
Although it's been an awesome adventure, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it's not a downer.
Yeah.
I've had more fun
yeah.
in the 4 years of around with these folks. I was good all month.
We were so close!
Damn it, Ryan!
We can edit that in post, right? But I've had more fun with these 4 people in the last 5 years than I've had
Oh yeah.
in my life.
Oh yeah.
And it's totally worth it.
Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have been the 4 Horsemen of the College of Arms.
Hurrah!